Imagine spending billions of dollars deploying the world's most advanced aircraft and dropping millions of tons of bombs. Now imagine that after years of relentless attacks, the target is still operating. That was the reality of America's war against the Ho Chi Minh Trail. For nearly a decade, the United States launched one of the largest aerial interdiction campaigns in military history. American commanders believed that if they could cut this hidden supply network, the war in South Vietnam would eventually collapse. Instead, the opposite happened. The trail survived, it expanded, and it became one of the greatest logistical achievements of the 20th century. How did a network of jungle roads built by one of the world's poorest countries defeat the most powerful air force on Earth? The answer is far more complicated than many people realize. It was not simply a battle of bombs versus trucks. It became a contest between technology and determination, between computers and human ingenuity, between overwhelming firepower and an enemy that refused to fight on America's terms. To understand why the United States could never stop the Ho Chi Minh Trail, we first have to understand what the trail really was. Most people imagine a single dirt road cutting through dense jungle. That picture is completely wrong. The Ho Chi Minh Trail was never just one road. It was an enormous transportation network stretching across the mountains of Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. Over the years, it grew into thousands of miles of roads, footpaths, rivers, pipelines, communication lines, storage depots, repair stations, hospitals, and hidden camps. Everything was connected. If one road was destroyed, another could immediately take its place. This flexibility made the network incredibly difficult to eliminate. Construction began shortly after North Vietnam decided to support the communist insurgency in South Vietnam. In 1959, Hanoi officially established the 559th Transportation Group. Its mission sounded simple: find a way to move soldiers and supplies into South Vietnam. The reality was anything but simple. The rugged Truong Son mountain range separated North Vietnam from the south. Dense tropical forests covered nearly every valley. Heavy rains turned roads into rivers of mud. Steep mountains slowed every vehicle. Disease was everywhere. Malaria became one of the greatest enemies faced by workers and soldiers alike. Yet these same conditions created the trail's greatest advantage. The jungle provided natural camouflage. American reconnaissance aircraft often struggled to see what was hidden beneath the thick forest canopy. Roads disappeared beneath trees. Truck parks vanished under layers of leaves and branches. Entire supply depots could remain invisible even after repeated surveillance flights. Thousands of engineers, soldiers, and civilian volunteers worked day and night. Many were young men and women who spent years building roads under constant danger. When American aircraft bombed a bridge, repair crews rushed in as soon as the attack ended. Sometimes temporary bridges were completed before sunrise. Other times, damaged roads were bypassed within hours. Every obstacle became another engineering problem to solve. By the early 1960s, the network was carrying growing numbers of soldiers into South Vietnam. Weapons, ammunition, food, fuel, medical supplies, and replacement equipment all traveled south through this hidden system. Every year, the network became larger. Every year, it became harder to destroy. American intelligence watched the expansion with increasing concern. Military planners understood a simple truth. If North Vietnam could continue sending troops and supplies south without interruption, the war could continue indefinitely. Stopping the trail became one of America's highest strategic priorities. But there was another problem. Most of the trail did not actually run through North Vietnam. Large sections crossed neighboring Laos. Others eventually extended into Cambodia. Both countries were officially neutral under international agreements. This created enormous political restrictions. The United States could not simply invade the entire trail with massive ground forces without risking a much wider international crisis. Instead, American leaders increasingly relied on air power. The belief seemed logical. Modern aircraft carrying precision weapons should easily destroy trucks moving along narrow jungle roads. Many commanders believed air power alone could choke off the flow of supplies. Few realized they were about to enter one of the most difficult logistical battles ever fought. What followed would push American technology to its limits. The skies above Laos soon became one of the busiest battlefields of the Vietnam War. Hundreds of aircraft would fly thousands of dangerous missions. New electronic sensors would listen to the jungle. Powerful computers would process information in real time. Special gunships would hunt trucks in total darkness. The United States was preparing to fight one of history's first high-technology wars. But technology alone would not be enough. In the next chapter, America launches Operation Commando Hunt, one of the largest bombing campaigns ever conducted. By 1968, American commanders believed they had finally found the solution. The results would surprise the entire world. If bombing alone had failed to stop the Ho Chi Minh Trail, perhaps a combination of overwhelming air power and cutting-edge technology could succeed. The new strategy was called Operation Commando Hunt. Its objective was simple: destroy the trucks, cut the supply lines, starve communist forces in South Vietnam, and force North Vietnam to abandon the war. On paper, the plan looked unstoppable. Never before had so much technology been concentrated on a single logistical target. The United States Air Force, Navy, and supporting intelligence agencies worked together to create one of the most sophisticated battlefield surveillance systems ever built. Instead of waiting for enemy trucks to appear, America wanted to find them before they even reached the battlefield. The operation focused primarily on Laos, where much of the trail passed through remote mountains and dense jungle. Because the region was sparsely populated, planners believed it offered an ideal environment for aerial interdiction. During the dry season, thousands of trucks traveled south, carrying everything needed to sustain the war. This was the moment American commanders intended to strike. Aircraft flew around the clock. Fighter bombers attacked roads and bridges. Heavy bombers blanketed suspected supply routes. Reconnaissance aircraft photographed every visible trail. Special operations teams gathered intelligence from the ground. The goal was relentless pressure. Repair crews would never be allowed enough time to restore the network. Yet there was one enormous problem. The jungle refused to cooperate. Pilots often saw nothing but endless green forests. Even after dropping bombs, it was difficult to know whether any trucks had actually been destroyed. Clouds covered the mountains for much of the year. Night operations became even more difficult. Traditional reconnaissance simply could not provide enough information. The answer came from an entirely new idea: electronic surveillance. The United States launched a classified project known as Operation Igloo White. This system represented one of the most ambitious military technology programs of the Cold War. Thousands of electronic sensors were secretly dropped along roads, mountain passes, river crossings, and suspected truck routes. Some sensors detected vibrations in the ground. Others listened for engine noise. Some could identify movement based on tiny changes in the surrounding environment. Each device transmitted radio signals whenever it detected activity. Those signals traveled through relay aircraft orbiting overhead before reaching a highly advanced command center in Thailand. Inside the control center, powerful computers analyzed enormous amounts of incoming data. For the late 1960s, this technology seemed almost unbelievable. Operators could watch electronic maps displaying possible truck movements across hundreds of miles of jungle. When multiple sensors detected activity in the same area, analysts estimated the size, direction, and speed of the convoy. Attack aircraft were immediately dispatched toward the target. For many American officers, this appeared to be the future of warfare. Machines would find the enemy. Computers would make rapid decisions. Aircraft would destroy the target before it escaped. To strengthen the system even further, the Air Force introduced one of its most effective weapons, the AC-130 gunship. Unlike fast-moving fighter aircraft, the AC-130 could circle above the battlefield for hours, equipped with powerful infrared cameras, low-light television systems, radar, and side-firing cannons. The aircraft became one of the deadliest truck hunters of the Vietnam War. Its sensors could detect heat from engines hidden beneath jungle cover. Its computers calculated firing solutions while the aircraft remained in a continuous orbit. Many truck drivers feared the AC-130 more than any other American aircraft. Some versions even carried a remarkable device known as the Black Crow sensor. Instead of searching for visible targets, Black Crow detected electromagnetic emissions created by vehicle ignition systems. Even trucks hidden beneath trees could reveal their position the moment the engine started. It was an extraordinary technological achievement. Many historians consider it one of the earliest examples of battlefield electronic intelligence being integrated directly into combat operations. American confidence grew rapidly. Reports claimed hundreds of trucks were being destroyed every month. Bomb damage assessments suggested impressive results. Military briefings painted an optimistic picture. Washington believed the pressure was finally working. Yet deep inside the jungle, a very different story was unfolding. North Vietnamese commanders had been carefully studying American tactics. They quickly realized that every new technology also created new weaknesses. Instead of abandoning the trail, they began adapting faster than anyone expected. Truck drivers changed their routes constantly. Convoys became smaller. Movement shifted almost entirely to nighttime. Roads were hidden beneath fresh layers of vegetation. Fake vehicle tracks confused reconnaissance aircraft. Dummy trucks and false storage sites attracted American bombs away from real targets. Repair crews waited patiently until aircraft disappeared before rushing onto damaged roads. Sometimes bomb craters were filled within only a few hours. Entire bypass roads appeared almost overnight. The more bombs fell, the more alternative routes were built. American technology had become incredibly sophisticated. But it was fighting an enemy that refused to behave according to American expectations. Every improvement in surveillance forced North Vietnam to become more creative. Every new bombing campaign produced another adaptation. The contest was no longer simply about destroying trucks. It had become a relentless battle between innovation and resilience. And despite all of America's technological advantages, the balance was beginning to shift. In the next chapter, we will see how North Vietnam transformed the Ho Chi Minh Trail into a self-healing logistical network, one that could absorb almost unlimited punishment while continuing to move men and supplies toward the battlefield. By the end of the 1960s, American aircraft had become a constant presence over the mountains of Laos. Day and night, bombers, fighters, reconnaissance planes, and gunships searched for signs of movement. The explosions were endless. Entire hillsides disappeared beneath clouds of smoke. Roads were torn apart. Bridges collapsed. Mountain passes were buried under tons of rock and earth. From the air, it looked impossible for anything to survive. Yet every morning, new truck convoys continued moving south. To American commanders, it was becoming an increasingly frustrating mystery. How could a supply network continue operating under one of the heaviest bombing campaigns in military history? The answer was hidden in the way the Ho Chi Minh Trail was organized. Unlike a traditional highway, the trail was designed to survive destruction. It did not depend on a single route. It depended on redundancy. If one road was destroyed, another road was already waiting. If a bridge collapsed, engineers built a temporary crossing nearby. If a mountain pass became impassable, traffic was redirected through an alternate valley. Every important section had multiple backup routes. Destroying one path rarely stopped the flow of supplies. It simply forced traffic somewhere else. American pilots often returned to bomb the same locations again and again. Many believed they were destroying critical choke points. In reality, North Vietnamese engineers had often bypassed those locations before the next airstrike even arrived. Perhaps the greatest strength of the trail was its workforce. Thousands of soldiers, engineers, construction workers, and civilian volunteers were assigned to keep the network alive. Many were barely out of their teenage years. They lived in the jungle for months or even years. Their mission was simple: repair whatever had been destroyed. After an air raid, repair teams waited until the aircraft disappeared. Then they immediately moved into the damaged area. Bomb craters were filled with dirt, rocks, logs, and bamboo. Damaged bridges were replaced with temporary structures. Trees were cut to hide fresh repairs from aerial reconnaissance. By sunrise, roads that had seemed completely destroyed only hours earlier were often usable again. This constant cycle frustrated American planners. Bombing damaged the trail. Repair crews restored it. Bombers returned. Repairs continued. The process repeated itself thousands of times. Nature also became an ally for North Vietnam. Dense jungle concealed nearly every movement. Truck drivers traveled almost exclusively after sunset. During daylight hours, vehicles disappeared beneath carefully prepared camouflage. Branches, leaves, and specially constructed shelters blended trucks into the surrounding forest. Some parking areas were nearly invisible from above. Even when reconnaissance aircraft photographed them, analysts often struggled to distinguish vehicles from natural vegetation. Movement itself became an art. Large convoys were avoided whenever possible. Instead of sending hundreds of trucks together, supplies were divided into smaller groups. One convoy might travel while another remained hidden. If American aircraft attacked one group, the others continued moving. The loss of a few vehicles rarely interrupted the overall mission. Drivers also became experts at deception. Fake tire tracks were created to lure bombers toward empty roads. Dummy bridges were constructed to attract attacks away from real crossings. Wooden trucks and fake supply depots were built beneath clearings where they could easily be seen from the air. American aircraft sometimes spent valuable bombs destroying targets that had never been real. One of the most remarkable achievements came beneath the ground. As the war continued, North Vietnam expanded an underground fuel pipeline system running through large sections of the trail. Instead of relying entirely on fuel trucks, gasoline and diesel could be pumped through hidden pipelines stretching hundreds of miles. This dramatically reduced the number of vulnerable fuel convoys. Even if roads were temporarily blocked, fuel continued flowing south. For American intelligence, the pipeline presented another enormous challenge. Unlike trucks, it could not simply be spotted from the air. It remained hidden beneath vegetation and soil. The trail was no longer just a transportation route. It had become a complete logistical ecosystem: food storage sites, medical stations, vehicle repair workshops, communications centers, ammunition depots, rest areas for soldiers. Everything necessary to sustain a long war existed within this hidden network. American bombs could destroy individual facilities. But replacing the entire system proved almost impossible. As the campaign continued, another uncomfortable reality emerged. Measuring success was far more difficult than anyone expected. Pilots reported destroyed trucks based on explosions or secondary fires. Infrared sensors sometimes counted burning wreckage more than once. Bomb damage assessments often relied on estimates rather than direct confirmation. Some military reports suggested thousands of trucks had been destroyed. Yet captured documents and later historical studies indicated that North Vietnam continued replacing losses faster than expected. The flow of men and supplies never completely stopped. This created growing disagreement inside the American military. Some commanders believed victory was only a matter of applying more pressure. Others began questioning whether bombing alone could ever achieve the strategic objective. The problem was becoming increasingly clear. The United States had focused on destroying the symptoms. North Vietnam focused on preserving the system. Every bomb crater became another repair project. Every destroyed bridge became another engineering challenge. Every technological advantage forced another adaptation. The Ho Chi Minh Trail had evolved into something far greater than a road. It had become a living network. Every damaged section healed. Every obstacle produced another solution. Every setback strengthened the experience of the people maintaining it. America possessed unmatched air power. North Vietnam possessed something equally powerful: the ability to adapt faster than the battlefield could change. By the early 1970s, one unavoidable question remained. If millions of bombs, advanced surveillance systems, and years of continuous attacks had failed to shut down the trail, had the United States been fighting the wrong battle from the very beginning? In the final chapter, we will examine why one of the most expensive military campaigns in American history failed to achieve its ultimate objective, and what lasting lessons. By 1972, the United States had invested enormous resources into stopping the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Thousands of aircraft had flown hundreds of thousands of combat missions. Millions of tons of bombs had been dropped across Laos, Cambodia, and parts of Vietnam. Advanced electronic surveillance systems monitored the jungle around the clock. Powerful computers processed battlefield information in real time. No military in history had ever attempted an interdiction campaign on such a scale. Yet the Ho Chi Minh Trail remained open. It was damaged repeatedly. It suffered heavy losses, but it never stopped functioning. Why? The answer begins with a simple misunderstanding. American strategy assumed that the trail was a target. In reality, it was a process. Destroying roads did not destroy the transportation system. Destroying trucks did not end the movement of supplies. Every damaged section could be repaired. Every destroyed vehicle could eventually be replaced. The strength of the trail was never its infrastructure. Its greatest strength was the people who operated it. North Vietnam accepted losses that many other nations would have considered impossible to sustain. Thousands of workers repaired roads under constant bombing. Truck drivers continued dangerous missions night after night. Engineers developed new routes whenever old ones became unusable. The system survived because the people inside it never stopped adapting. Another factor was political reality. Many Americans later asked a simple question. Why did the United States not send large ground forces into Laos and completely occupy the trail? The answer was complicated. Laos was officially a neutral country under international agreements. A full-scale invasion carried enormous political and diplomatic risks. American leaders feared that expanding the ground war could trigger wider international consequences and further increase domestic opposition to the conflict. As a result, Washington relied primarily on air power. Air power was devastating. But by itself, it could not permanently occupy terrain. Bombers could destroy a road today. Repair crews could rebuild it tomorrow. Aircraft could force temporary disruption. They could not maintain continuous physical control over thousands of square miles of rugged jungle. This became one of the central lessons of the Vietnam War. Air superiority does not always guarantee strategic success. Technology also had limits. Operation Igloo White represented one of the most advanced surveillance systems of its era. The sensors worked. The computers worked. The aircraft worked. But the entire system depended on accurate information and predictable enemy behavior. North Vietnam refused to remain predictable. Truck routes changed constantly. Convoys altered their schedules. Supplies moved in smaller groups. Dummy targets confused pilots. Fresh camouflage concealed real activity. Every American innovation was eventually met with another North Vietnamese adaptation. The battle became a continuous cycle. Detection, bombing, repair, adaptation. Detection again. Neither side remained static. But one side only needed the trail to remain partially open. The other needed to shut it down completely. That difference proved decisive. Military historians continue debating exactly how effective Operation Commando Hunt really was. There is little doubt that American bombing destroyed thousands of vehicles, delayed shipments, and forced North Vietnam to devote massive manpower and resources to protecting the trail. The campaign imposed significant costs. It slowed transportation. It complicated logistics. It caused real damage. But those tactical successes never became strategic victory. The trail continued delivering enough soldiers, weapons, ammunition, fuel, and supplies to sustain military operations in South Vietnam. When North Vietnam launched the Easter Offensive in 1972, the logistical network once again demonstrated its resilience. Only a few years later, during the final campaigns of 1975, the expanded trail supported one of the largest military offensives in Vietnamese history. The very network America had spent years trying to destroy played a crucial role in the final victory of North Vietnamese forces. Today, the Ho Chi Minh Trail is studied in military academies around the world. Not because it was invincible. It was not. It suffered constant attack. It experienced enormous losses. Its workers endured extraordinary hardship. Instead, it is studied because it demonstrated how logistics can determine the outcome of war. Modern military planners often focus on advanced aircraft, precision weapons, satellites, drones, and artificial intelligence. The Vietnam War reminds us that technology alone cannot guarantee victory. Success depends on understanding the enemy's strategy, adaptability, political constraints, geography, and the human will to continue fighting. The Ho Chi Minh Trail was never simply a road through the jungle. It was a system designed to survive. It transformed mountains into highways. It turned ordinary workers into frontline engineers. It connected battlefields hundreds of miles apart. And despite facing the most powerful air force in the world, it continued operating until the war reached its conclusion. Perhaps the greatest lesson is not that America lacked military power. It clearly possessed overwhelming power. The lesson is that overwhelming power does not always overcome an opponent who can adapt faster than expected. History has repeatedly shown that wars are rarely won by firepower alone. They are won by the ability to sustain people, supplies, and determination over time. The Ho Chi Minh Trail proved that logistics can become one of the most powerful weapons on any battlefield. And more than 50 years later, military strategists across the world continue studying its lessons, searching for answers to a question that once puzzled the world's most powerful nation. How could a hidden network in the jungle withstand one of the greatest bombing campaigns in history? The answer was never found in the bombs. It was found in resilience, adaptation, and an understanding that in war, the strongest weapon is not always the most powerful machine. Sometimes it is the system that refuses to break.